I opened the envelope with shaking hands, right there in the bathroom of the venue, just 15 minutes before the ceremony. Inside was the DNA test I'd been waiting on for a week, and in one cruel, quiet sentence, my world folded in half. The little girl Vanessa had sworn was her niece from a distant cousin, she was hers, and not mine, and not from any cousin either. She was his. I stared at that paper like it was written in fire. The music outside was playing, light, cheerful, completely unaware. I could hear people laughing, glasses clinking. I could hear my own heartbeat louder than any of it. But I didn't cancel the wedding. Not then. No, I waited. I waited until every chair was filled, until every guest we loved was gathered, smiling, thinking they were about to watch two people promise each other forever. I waited until the officiant smiled, took a breath, and asked, as they always do, if anyone had any reason why these two should not be wed. And that's when I turned around, manila folder in hand, DNA results inside. The look on Vanessa's face when she saw it, God, if I live to be 100, I'll still remember that look. She knew before she even opened it. Her body knew. Her skin knew. You can't fake that kind of terror. Not when the truth's been scratching at your door for months and you finally hear it kick it wide open. But let me back up. My name's Matt. I was supposed to get married last October. Vanessa and I met 5 years ago at a 4th of July barbecue hosted by a mutual friend. I showed up late, burger in one hand, a 6-pack of some terrible craft beer in the other, and there she was, sitting on the tailgate of a pickup, laughing like she didn't have a care in the world. She wore this red sundress, her hair braided down her back, flip-flops dangling from her toes. She had a kind of gravity to her, not flashy, not loud, just magnetic. You found yourself leaning toward her without meaning to. I wasn't smooth. Never have been. I made some dumb comment about the fireworks schedule, and she smiled at me like I was the only man who'd said anything worth hearing that night. That smile? It wrecked me. We started slow. Bonfires. Late-night coffee runs. Sundays spent wandering flea markets, pretending we were the kind of people who had spaces to decorate. She taught me how to dance, badly, in her living room. I taught her how to change a tire. She made me feel possible. Like maybe I could be more than just the guy who clocked in, clocked out, paid his bills on time. By the time I proposed, there wasn't a doubt in my mind. She was it. My girl. My future. There were warning signs, though. Looking back now, there always are, aren't there? You just convince yourself they're nothing. That love makes you bulletproof. That trust is enough. 6 months before the wedding, Vanessa dropped a bombshell. She had a daughter. A little girl named Lily. 3 years old. Sweet as pie, she said. Born from a messy chapter before me. She told me the father wasn't in the picture, had never been in the picture, and never would be. She hadn't told me before because she was afraid I'd run, afraid I'd see her differently. I didn't. God help me, I didn't run. I said all the right things. That Lily was part of her, and if I loved her, I loved Lily too. That family wasn't about blood, it was about showing up. I meant it when I said it. Every word. Vanessa cried when I told her I wasn't going anywhere. But that night, lying awake, staring at the ceiling, something heavy settled in my chest that I couldn't shake. It wasn't Lily. It was the feeling that there were still more things she wasn't telling me. I pushed it down, buried it under wedding stress and trust and new beginnings. But the thing about the truth? It doesn't stay buried. It has roots. And sooner or later, it breaks the surface, whether you're ready or not. About a month before the wedding, a friend of mine, James, pulled me aside after work. James isn't the gossipy type. He's a numbers guy, straight-laced, the kind of man who triple-checks his receipts. He looked uncomfortable, like he'd swallowed something sharp. He said, Matt, listen, I don't want to get in your business, but you need to know something. Turns out, a buddy of his from college, a guy I didn't even know, had dated Vanessa briefly. Not long ago. Not years ago. Recently. And not casually, either. He showed James pictures. Screenshots. Vanessa in his apartment. Vanessa texting about taking a break from her fiancé to figure things out. I told myself it couldn't be true. That maybe it was a misunderstanding. Old photos. Some kind of overlap before we were official. But the dates lined up wrong. And my gut, the part of me I'd been ignoring for months, finally started screaming. Still, I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I did what any man in denial does. I bought time. Smiled through cake tastings. Signed checks for deposits. Held her hand when she picked out flowers. And all the while, That little voice in the back of my mind whispered, she's hiding something. The week before the wedding, I asked her again, gently, if there was anything she needed to tell me. She smiled, tilted her head, and said no. I wanted so badly to believe her, but I didn't. So I hired a private lab, paid through the nose for a rush DNA test, told them I needed to know if Lily was really just hers, or if there was still someone else in the picture. They said they'd get it done before the wedding. I prayed I was wrong. I prayed that envelope would come back clean. It didn't. And on the day that should have been the best of my life, I stood there, in a suit that suddenly felt like armor, and made a choice. I wasn't going to protect her lie anymore. I was going to let the truth do what it does best. Rip the mask clean off. And brother, the real show hadn't even started yet. I didn't need to say a word. The moment I handed the folder to the officiant, the entire room shifted. You could feel it. Like the air itself took a step back. The officiant, poor guy, looked down at the folder like it was a bomb with a ticking timer. He glanced at me, glanced at Vanessa, then back at the guests, all wide-eyed and holding their breath. Vanessa didn't move. Not right away. But her mother, Sharon, did. She stood up from the front row, her heels clicking like gunshots against the wooden floor, her voice cutting the silence. Matt, what are you doing? Not angry. Not panicked. Controlling. The way a person speaks when they think they can still steer the car after it's already left the cliff. I didn't look at her. I kept my eyes locked on Vanessa. And finally, she stepped forward, took the folder from the officiant's trembling hands. I watched her fingers shake as she flipped it open. One sheet of paper. A few simple words. Not a story. Not an argument. Just the cold, hard math of biology. She pressed her lips together, blinking fast. The color drained from her face. And that's when she broke. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. No screaming. No fainting. Just a soft sound, almost like a whimper, as she folded the paper back inside the folder and clutched it to her chest. Sharon reached her side in 2 long strides. Don't, Vanessa whispered, too quiet for most people to hear. But I heard. She didn't want her mother's help. She knew there was no saving this moment. The officiant, bless him, cleared his throat and said something about taking a brief pause while the couple sorted out a personal matter. His voice cracked halfway through it, like even he knew it was a pointless formality. I turned to the guests. Friends. Family. People who'd flown across the country, who'd booked hotels, who'd bought new suits and dresses because they loved us. Because they believed in us. I owed them more than awkward silence. So I stepped up to the little podium and said, I'm sorry you all had to see this, but I'm not going to marry someone who doesn't know how to tell the truth. Simple. Quiet. But the kind of calm that strains under the weight of everything you're holding back. But it landed harder than any scream could have. Gasps. Murmurs. One woman, I think it was Vanessa's aunt, started crying into her clutch. And then, I walked out. Straight down the center aisle. Past my parents, my mom's hand covering her mouth, my dad staring straight ahead like if he didn't blink, he could somehow hold the world together. Past my best man, Trevor, who looked like he wanted to chase after me but didn't know if he should. Past the flower arrangements we'd spend hours picking out. Past the altar where I almost said vows to a future built on broken promises. Out into the open air, where the sky was painfully, beautifully blue, where everything smelled like autumn and endings. I didn't stop walking until I hit the parking lot. And even then, I didn't cry, didn't yell, didn't punch a wall. I just stood there, breathing in the kind of silence that only comes after you finally rip the blindfold off and look at the wreckage head on. Behind me, the church doors swung open. I heard footsteps. Fast. Light. I knew it wasn't Vanessa. It was Trevor. He jogged up, jacket unbuttoned, tie askew. You okay, man? He said, voice rough. I almost laughed. Define okay, I said. He hesitated, then pulled a flask from his pocket, the one he wasn't supposed to have during the ceremony, and handed it to me. I took a long pull. The burn felt good. Real. I should have called it off sooner, I said, voice low. Trevor didn't argue. Didn't give me some BS about how love conquers all or how Vanessa was just scared. He just stood there with me. 2 men, stripped of ceremony, stripped of expectations. Just standing in the ruins of a day that was supposed to be beautiful. You did the right thing, he said finally. And somehow, hearing it from him, not a parent, not a therapist, not some stranger, made it feel a little less like failure. A little more like survival. The next few hours are a blur in my memory. Someone canceled the reception. Someone told the guests. Someone boxed up the cake and flowers and decorations that were supposed to celebrate a life that didn't exist anymore. Not me. I didn't want to be there for any of it. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. Just away. Windows down. Radio off. Letting the wind strip the leftover pieces of the life I almost stepped into. At some point, my phone buzzed. I didn't check it. I didn't want to hear apologies. Or explanations. Or lies dressed up like confessions. I just wanted quiet. But of course, life doesn't hand you clean exits when you want them. It leaves threads hanging. Things you have to face before you can really move on. And before that day was done, I'd find out. The affair wasn't the end of it. It was just the first crack. And the worst betrayal? It was still waiting. The night after the wedding that wasn't. I stayed at a cheap roadside motel. One of those places where the vending machine hums louder than the TV and the bedspread feels like it's been there since the Eisenhower administration. I didn't sleep much. Mostly just lay there, staring at the water stain on the ceiling, wondering how the hell I got it so wrong. Vanessa hadn't called, hadn't texted, which, honestly, was almost worse than the idea of her trying. It was like she knew there wasn't anything left to salvage. Still, I knew it couldn't end like that. Not with so many questions still hanging in the air like smoke. So the next morning, after staring at my coffee until it went cold, I called Trevor. "Man," he said when he picked up, "you sure you want to dig deeper?" "Need to," I said. He didn't argue. Just said he'd be there in 10. When he pulled up, I could tell he hadn't slept much either. He passed me a bag from the gas station, bad coffee, a breakfast sandwich that tasted vaguely of cardboard, and we sat in silence, eating like soldiers before a battle. And then he said it. "There's something you don't know." The way he said it, like the words had been burning a hole in his mouth all night, made my stomach turn. "What?" I asked, not sure I wanted the answer. He hesitated. "You remember James? The guy who tipped you off about Vanessa seeing someone else?" "Yeah." "Well," Trevor said, rubbing the back of his neck. He didn't just hear about it secondhand. I stared at him. "What are you talking about?" "He was there, Matt. In Miami." The words landed hard. He was at the hotel. Trevor's voice was low, careful. "He saw her. With him." I swallowed. My mouth felt like sandpaper. "You're saying he knew the whole time?" "He didn't know how to tell you. He felt trapped. Said if he said something too soon, you'd hate him. Said he hoped maybe she'd come clean first. So he waited. Weeks turned into months. And all that time, he watched you plan a future built on lies." I let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah? How's that plan working out?" Trevor winced. "I'm just the messenger, man." I leaned back against the headrest, trying to process it. James. A guy I'd known since college. A guy who stood up with me at the engagement party, who toasted to our forever. He saw it happening. He saw her hand in another man's. Saw the betrayal written plain across her body. And he said nothing. I wasn't even angry at Vanessa right then. I was angry at the whole web of silence around me. The people who knew. The people who watched. The people who decided, silently, that my happiness wasn't worth the discomfort of truth. "I need to talk to him," I said. Trevor nodded. "Already set it up." And that's how, an hour later, I found myself sitting at a sticky booth in a half-empty diner, staring across the table at James. He looked terrible. Eyes bloodshot. Shirt wrinkled. The kind of man who'd been living in guilt for a while now. "Matt," he started. "Don't," I said, holding up a hand. "Just tell me. All of it." He sighed. Rubbed his face. I was in Miami for a bachelor party. Different hotel, same beach. I was heading back to my room when I saw her. With him. Arm around her waist. Laughing like they didn't have a care in the world. He shook his head. I took a picture. I didn't even think. It was instinct. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. He pulled out his phone, scrolled, and handed it to me. There she was. Vanessa. The man. The intimacy between them impossible to mistake. It wasn't even about the kiss. It was in the body language. The way her hand curled against his chest like she belonged there. "Why didn't you tell me then?" I asked, voice low. James looked shattered. "Because I told Trevor first. I thought maybe if you heard it from someone closer. I thought maybe if I waited, she'd confess." He swallowed hard. "And because I was a coward. No defense. No excuses. Just the raw, ugly truth." "I'm sorry, man," he said, eyes shining. "I screwed up. And for the first time since this whole mess started, I didn't feel rage. I felt grief. Deep, marrow-level grief for all the things I believed that weren't true." I stood up, tossing a couple bills on the table for coffee I hadn't even touched. James didn't try to stop me, didn't beg forgiveness. He just sat there, shoulders slumped, a man finally forced to live with what he'd done. And as I walked out into the blinding afternoon sun, I realized something important. The worst betrayals don't always come from enemies. They come from the people who swore they had your back. And that's when I made a decision. No more blind trust. No more second-guessing my gut. I was done playing nice with the wreckage. If Vanessa wanted to act like the victim, if James wanted to drown in his guilt, fine. But I wasn't going to be another casualty in their mess. I was going to clean my hands of it and build something better, even if it meant starting from the ashes. After I walked out of that diner, I drove. No destination, just a need to feel the hum of tires on pavement, the kind of simple motion that makes you feel like maybe you're leaving the past behind with every mile. Didn't work, of course. Pain rides shotgun whether you invite it or not. I ended up at the old Overlook, the place Vanessa and I used to go in the early days when gas was cheap and love was new. You could see the whole town from there. Little clusters of light. The river winding like a silver thread. It always felt bigger than us back then. Now it just felt small. I sat on the hood of my truck, staring out over the town, when my phone buzzed. It was Trevor. Man, he said, without even a hello. You need to hear this. Can it wait? No, he said. Trust me. I sighed and told him to talk. Turns out, Vanessa hadn't been lying low these past 24 hours. No, she was busy. Busy trying to fix things. Busy calling guests, spinning her own version of the story before mine could take root. Said it was a misunderstanding. Said I had cold feet. Said we both made mistakes. Trevor only found out because one of his cousins, who'd been at the wedding, called him up confused, asking if I was okay. If the rumors were true that I panicked and fabricated the DNA test because I was terrified of commitment. I almost laughed. Almost. Because the cruelty of it wasn't even the lie. It was how predictable it was. Vanessa always knew how to bend the story just enough to make herself the wounded party. Even after everything. Even after I spared her the public humiliation she so richly earned, by not screaming the truth into the rafters when I could have. That's when something inside me hardened. No more letting her control the narrative. No more protecting the person who stabbed me in the back. I called my lawyer the next morning. No, we weren't married yet. But we'd signed a pre-wedding financial agreement, something my dad had insisted on when he helped with the down payment on our house. It was supposed to protect both of us. No, it protected me. The house was legally mine. The car, too. Only thing left to split was a few wedding costs. Costs Vanessa's parents had fronted, and they weren't coming after me for it. They wanted this whole thing buried faster than a scandal at a country club. But what really stuck the knife in deeper? The lawyer pulled a file I hadn't seen before. An insurance document. A life insurance policy. Active and signed, taken out on me 6 months earlier. Nothing huge, not millions, but enough. Enough that if anything happened to me, she'd be sitting pretty. She listed herself as the sole beneficiary. Didn't tell me. Didn't ask. Signed the paperwork on her own. Probably framed it like responsible future planning, the lawyer said with a shrug. You'd be surprised how many couples do it. But without telling you? That's shady as hell. It hit me then, like a slap. Vanessa didn't just cheat. She didn't just lie. She was planning for every possible future, including one where I wasn't in it. And you know what? Somewhere deep inside me, some stubborn parts still wanted to find a way to forgive the affair. Still wanted to write it off as fear or confusion or loneliness. But not this. Not the way she preemptively protected herself. Not the way she twisted love into an insurance policy with a price tag. That's when the grief died, and rage took its place. But not the loud, messy rage. No, this was a cold, quiet rage. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that moves carefully, deliberately. I gathered every photo, every love letter, every relic of our time together, packed them into a box, and drove to her mother's house. Sharon answered the door, lips pursed so tight they looked bloodless. I didn't wait for pleasantries. Just set the box on the porch. Give this to her, I said. Tell her she can keep the memories. I'm keeping my life. Sharon looked like she wanted to say something, maybe apologize, maybe defend, maybe beg. I didn't wait to find out. I walked away. And you know what? It felt good. Not vindictive. Not cruel. Just clean. Back at my apartment, I sat on the floor with a cold beer, staring at the blank spaces where wedding gifts had once piled up. And I realized something. Vanessa didn't love me. She loved the idea of me. The stability. The protection. The version of herself she could sell to the world by standing next to me in a white dress. But love isn't supposed to be a transaction. It's supposed to be a choice. Every day. Especially when it's hard. And the woman I almost married? She chose herself, over and over, even when it burned everything else to the ground. The good news? So could I. I chose me. And it wasn't the ending I wanted. But it was the one I needed. I didn't plan to see her again. Not really. After I dropped that box off at her mother's house, I figured it was over, clean break, no messy final act, no midnight phone calls or dramatic front lawn scenes. But life, as it does, had other plans. It was about a week later. Late Sunday afternoon. I'd just gotten back from a long hike, something I hadn't done in years. The air smelled like pine and cold dirt. My legs ached in that good way that reminds you you're alive. I was unlocking my door when I heard it. Matt. I turned. There she was. Vanessa. Standing at the bottom of the steps like a ghost pulled out of memory. No makeup. No jewelry. Just jeans, a sweatshirt, and bare, pleading hands. She looked smaller than I remembered. Or maybe I just finally saw her clearly. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Then she took a step forward. I just need 5 minutes, she said, voice cracking. Please. I should have said no. Should have turned the key, walked inside, and closed that chapter without a second glance. But some part of me, some battered, stubborn part, still wanted the real goodbye. Still wanted to hear her say it out loud. I nodded once. She climbed the steps slow, like every stair might give out under her. We stood there on my porch, just two people tied together by a story neither of us wanted to tell anymore. I never meant to hurt you, she said first, her voice so soft I had to lean in to catch it. I didn't answer. There wasn't an answer that would fit anyway. I panicked, she said. When we got engaged, when everything got so real. I felt like I was drowning. I crossed my arms, waiting. I thought maybe if I could just have one more. Freedom. One more. What if? I could walk down that aisle without doubt, she said. I thought I could leave it all behind after that weekend. And the life insurance? I asked quietly. She flinched. I didn't mean anything by it, she said quickly. It was just, my mom suggested it. She said it was smart. That it was part of being responsible. I gave a small, humorless laugh. Yeah, I said. Real responsible. She wiped at her eyes, like maybe if she could erase the tears, she could erase the past too. I loved you, she whispered. I nodded. I know, I said. You just didn't love me enough to be honest. Silence again. Heavy. Broken only by the wind rattling the dying leaves across the pavement. I hate what I did, she said finally. I hate what I lost. You didn't lose me, I said, voice steady. You gave me away. That was the moment she broke. No sobbing, no theatrics. Just this quiet, gut-wrenching collapse, like someone who realized they'd burned the only bridge back to the place they truly wanted to be. I don't expect forgiveness, she said. Good, I said, soft but firm. Because I'm not giving it today. She nodded, tears sliding silently down her face now. I'm sorry, she said again, and this time, it wasn't for me. It was for herself. Because that's the thing about regret. It's selfish, even when it's real. I opened the door behind me, stepped inside. Before I closed it, I said the last words I ever spoke to her. I hope you find whatever it is you're looking for, Vanessa. I really do. But it was never going to be at the end of an aisle. And then I shut the door. No slam. No final scream. Just a click, quiet, decisive, the way you close a chapter that has nothing left to say. I leaned against the door for a long moment. Not crying. Not raging. Just breathing. The hardest part wasn't letting her go. It was realizing she'd already been gone long before I found out. She just didn't have the courage to admit it. And me? I finally had the courage to walk away. For good. After she left my porch that day, Vanessa disappeared from my life like smoke through a broken window. No texts. No calls. No birthday reminders or holiday guilt trips. She was just gone. And honestly, it was a mercy. Because the thing nobody tells you about heartbreak is that it's not the absence that kills you. It's the constant reopening. The moments when the past leaks into the present through a crack you forgot to seal. Without her, the bleeding stopped. Slowly, quietly, I kept the apartment for a while. Too stubborn to let her memory evict me from my own life. But it didn't feel like home anymore. Everything reminded me of a life that almost was. The couch where we picked wedding colors. The kitchen counter where we ate Chinese food straight from the cartons, dreaming about baby names. The dent in the wall from where she dropped a suitcase the night before we went to meet the florist. It all felt stale, heavy, like trying to breathe underwater. So one day, about 6 months later, I packed up what was left of my things. I didn't sell the place out of anger. I didn't torch it for some symbolic rebirth. I just let it go. Sometimes healing isn't fireworks. It's paperwork and moving boxes and long drives to nowhere. I rented a small cabin about 30 minutes outside town. 1 bedroom. Wood stove. No Wi-Fi unless you hiked up the ridge. It wasn't much, but it was mine. I'd wake up to the sound of birds, not traffic. Drink coffee on a porch swing instead of rushing out the door late for meetings. Start my days by chopping wood instead of checking my phone. And little by little, the noise inside me got quieter. It's funny. I didn't even realize how much of myself I'd lost trying to be the man Vanessa needed until I wasn't carrying that weight anymore. I started writing again, something I hadn't done since college. Nothing fancy. Mostly old memories, half-finished songs, letters I never sent. I reconnected with people too. Old friends I drifted from. Family I'd been too busy to visit. Not with some grand speech about mistakes and regrets. Just quiet dinners, long hikes, Sunday mornings spent fixing broken fences or brewing terrible coffee over campfires. I stopped measuring my worth by how much someone else loved me. Started measuring it by how true I was to myself. And one night, a cold, clear night with stars so thick you could scoop them out of the sky, I realized something. I didn't miss Vanessa. I didn't miss the wedding that never happened. I didn't even miss the future we'd planned. I missed the man I used to be before I thought I needed fixing. Before I thought I had to prove I was enough. And somehow, somewhere between the wreckage and the rebuilding, I found him again. A little older, a little scarred, but still standing, still hopeful, still here. It's been a few years now. I heard through the grapevine that Vanessa moved to a different state, married someone else, had a kid. I'm not bitter. Honestly, I hope she's happy. Not because she deserves it, maybe she does, maybe she doesn't, but because I deserve to let go. Forgiveness, I learned, isn't about giving the other person peace. It's about giving yourself permission to stop carrying a weight that was never yours to hold. I never saw her again after that day on my porch. Never needed to. Because closure? It's not a conversation. It's not an apology. It's waking up one morning, standing in the light of a brand new day, and realizing, you survived. You're still here. You're still you. Maybe even a little better for the break. And me? I'm building something real now. Not with desperation. Not with fear. But with open hands. With honesty. With hope. And next time, because there will be a next time, I won't be standing at the altar wondering if the person beside me is telling the whole truth. I'll be standing there knowing. I already did the hard work. I already learned the hardest lesson. And this time, the only thing I'll be holding is the hand of someone who truly chose me. No folders. No secrets. No ghosts. Just love. The real kind. The kind that doesn't ask you to be perfect. Just present. And that's the only forever worth saying yes to.